Lads, there's a new dev talk that just dropped. I'm going to cover everything about it. You got Robin Hinkies. It says he's the game director, but he's actually the CEO. I don't know why he doesn't just go by that title. He's got his, hands locked in the usual stance that he has. And basically, there's new Shapeshifter weapons. I'm going to watch the video frame by frame and tell you all the things that they won't tell you about the video and things coming out in the future. I don't know when these things are coming out, but I will be able to tell you and break down the abilities and the, speculate on the stats. I don't know how the IP differences will adjust and affect how much damage or health or buffs you get, but I'm going to basically break down everything that the video isn't telling you, so that you won't be surprised later on. So here are the Shapeshifter staffs, and let's do the very first prediction just by looking at them. I believe that to craft these, it's going to introduce stone into the economy. So it'll most likely be stone and then another resource. So I think the stone staff will just be extra stone. This one could be, looks like maybe leather. This one is very wooden-like. Here's cloth. And, well, that one's also wooden. So maybe that one's wood and this one's iron. I don't know. But I think that's how that's how the crafting will be. We shall see. So the very first spell that is shown is this chain lightning ability right here. This seems to bounce off one guy and hit two people behind them. I don't know how many bounces there are, but when you play most RPG games, the bounces are around 4. That's my guess, is that it'll have 4 bounces. The second spell is this debilitating blue puddle that seems to kind of have a big hitbox here. And interesting enough, when this was cast on the enemies, it also made the player glow a bit. So I think it might be some sort of possibly life siphoning or maybe damage reduction. I don't know, but it definitely does deal some damage over time. So first up, we get to the wolf shape, and this is what I don't know if these are not going to be the official names, but the Q is a chain lightning, the W is a debilitating puddle, the E is always the transformation, at least looking at the art that we'll see later in the video. So when you push your E spell, you'll transform into whatever shape you have. In this case, it's a werewolf, and while you're in werewolf form, there was 2 attacks that are shown. There's a forward dash where you dash through the enemies and slice everything up. And this healed the player. Now, I don't know if this player was eating a roast pork, or if that's just part of the weapon. I would assume that, a werewolf is eating the blood or something. It's not really a vampire, but, it's some sort of self-heal. And then the Q is just a front cleave. I don't know if this heals, but I'll keep watching. So that's the werewolf. And so the way this will work is that in human form, you'll cast your spells, they'll go on cooldown. So you're kind of a sitting duck unless you transform. Then you transform into the werewolf. You cast your werewolf spells, and then those are on cooldown. So you switch back to your human form, and then hey, your chain lightning's back up. Your debilitating puddle is back up. So you cast those, and you just kind of go back and forth, and that way it's just more buttons to hit. In this scene here, I want to point out. Let me hide the text. This is the Fishy Business Blue Zone Tier 4 Solo Expedition. Severely nerfs your item power, and this is just what I got from this scene. The Q is some sort of channeled spirit bolt thing that interrupts abilities. The W is also the debilitating puddle that we saw on the werewolf staff, which, like most weapons in Albion Online, in the same weapon line, your W spells are all the same on every weapon, so maybe that's how it is on this, too. And, of course, the E lets you transform into a bear, which is not shown in this scene. Now, this next scene here, I can't identify exactly what this staff is. It looks like it might be the Trent staff. I'm not sure which is the big tree monsters, but it's showing off the W ability, which looks like some sort of pull and shield, where you can target an ally, pull them to you, and give them a shield. So it's kind of like a disengage if one of your friends are stuck in a murder pile, right, or a clump. But also, the Q spell right here looks very familiar. This graphic shares the same graphic as the Cursed Stab's Desecrate, which I don't think they would just give them Desecrate. So that's probably placeholder graphics. I don't know. We'll learn about it soon enough. So let me hit you with a bit of math here. In the video, the player transforms into a bear, and what's noticeable is that their maximum HP changes. So here's the stats on this. And here's how to do the formula, because Reddit likes to say my math is bullshit, and it's not. It's correct. And here's how to do it, because apparently they just don't know math formulas. So, you take the starting HP of the human, 2,971, when they transform into a bear. Their maximum HP becomes 4,199. So here's how you figure out the percentage increase. You take your maximum HP, you minus or subtract the starter HP. Then you take that number, whatever it is, and you divide it by the starter HP. Then you take that number and multiply it by 100, because 100 signifies a percent of 100. So that's the formula. Use PEMDAS, alright? Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, whatever you call it, and do the formula, do the math yourself if you don't believe me. But the TLDR is that right now in this video, the bear buff is giving the player a 41.33% increase to their HP. Next up, once transformed into the bear, they show off the Q attack, which it looks like it is an AoE circle slam that also debuffs the enemy, because you can see the debuff on the champion of Bridgewatch here. That was not there before they were hit by the slam attack. I just want to point out that when it shows all the shapes, the golem gets the little purple squirrel thing from the mists, and that's really unfair for everyone else, because you get a little animal companion. In this part of the video, it shows the wolf form once again, and we already know that the Q is a frontal cleave attack, but this time we now find out that it's a 2-second cooldown, so that's really, really good. The only other weapons that I know that have such a short cooldown on the Q spells are the crossbow's explosive bolt here. So it will be really interesting to see how strong this weapon is at maximum spec and 8.4 gear. It could be the new dungeon farming meta weapon, who knows? Here's another thing that I want to point out that I've noticed here. The player transformed into the werewolf, but they did not have any of these charges built up, as in they didn't cast any of their human form spells to give them these little blue-like bars underneath their mana bar. And what happens is, in this form now, their W spell is grayed out. That means they can't do that forward lunge attack. They can still do the Q spell, and even though they're hitting the enemies with the Q spell, they're not building charges, so you can only build the charges in human form, it looks like. You can see here that this player that's being attacked has, they have 4 out of 5 charges on their bar. So you'll be able to see if a player is, about to transform and start casting their W spells. Also, when this character transforms into a wolf, their HP does change, and I'm kind of covering their HP, but right here at the top, in human form, they're at 3,085 HP. They transform into the wolf with no charges, and now their HP is increased by 11.86%. So it'll be interesting to see if having charges, well, they have 1 charge, I guess. If having the charges increases your HP more so. Also, I noticed that I don't think they casted the W spell with this 1 charge, but they started casting Q. So I think that the Q spell ability eats your charges and does maybe a little bit of bonus damage. It's kind of hard to tell, but that's my speculation. So in the art, they showed the pink little squirrel, but here you don't see the pink squirrel. What's going on? Bring back the pink squirrel. They better have the pink squirrel in the final version. Also, look how big this makes you compared to the human players. Well, these aren't human players, these are NPCs, obviously. But imagine an entire Zerg versus Zerg where everyone is the golem. Here we have a scene with the Imp staff, which is interesting because I like the glass cannon playstyles. And this person is actually quite geared. I can move the text a bit. They have 3,928 HP. That is pretty much 8.4 equivalent gear. When I strap on all my 8.4 gear with 100 spec, that's about how much HP I'll have. And just looking at the Q skills, the W skills, the Q skill looks like the same as that we've seen earlier. It's like a spirit barrage that can interrupt. The W we have not seen, but it looks like the meatball ability. That's just the meme. It's the Wildfire Staff E ability, which shoots a big burning boulder that you can manually explode. So I had to watch this frame by frame, but I also realized they had the combat log open down here in the video. And what's interesting is this is polymorph. The W spell shoots a blue, very bright orb. It's a skill shot. It is not a targeted spell like in World of Warcraft. And when you hit the enemy with this orb, it turns them into that purple squirrel thing that I've been pointing out earlier in the video. It debuffs them with the little meatball icon. And it also hurts them for a very little amount of damage. 218, if you're an 8.4, that seems like a very poor amount of damage, but in most, RPGs, when you are polymorphed, you're probably silenced or slowed, you can't move, your character might move around randomly, so it's a little different than World of Warcraft's polymorph, but we'll have to see exactly what it does. So here's the bad thing about this imp form, which this really sucks, is the caster, like I said, they're probably an 8.4, they had 3,928 HP to start with, and then when they transform to the imp, their HP is only 2,378. I don't think the enemy casted anything to lower their maximum HP from the looks of this combat here. So that means when you transform into the imp, you lose 40% of your maximum HP. This is huge, and what this means is that all the damage that you take in imp form, assuming it works the same as giant boots or giant potions, means that you're essentially going to be taking 40% increased damage, making this the most glass cannon attack or transformation or ability in the game. Whispering Bow is like 20%. I think having a Crypt Candle at 8.4 lowers your defense by, I don't know, let's check. I actually have one. Let's see, Crypt Candle. How much defense do you lower here? Where are you at, Crypt Candle? Come on, there you are. Okay, so Crypt Candle only lowers your defense by 13%, so that's not that bad. But Crypt Candle still makes you incredibly squishy in PvP, so much that people will focus you. So if you transform into this imp, I think you're just as good as dead. Now, this part is interesting because when they're in imp form, they cast a W spell. According to the combat log, it is called Hellfire Barrage, and it looks like to be a very rapid series of firebolts. And I counted it. It was 1,665 damage, which this also could have been applied by the party member, but it's not really clear in the footage. But essentially, this player who was wearing plate took 1,665 damage in 1.5 seconds. Alright, I took a second look at the footage because doing that much damage to plate makes zero sense. And it turns out they're not wearing plate, it's just they have this weird shield on their back, and it made it look like a plate armor, but when rewatching the fight from the beginning, it's clearly cloth armor, so this is nothing really special. Alright, so they actually casted the Q spell in this shot, and it looks like they can spam it, really. The cooldown seemed pretty low, but it was a floating fire orb that just continued to travel along a path, and here you can see that it's kind of crumbling because it hit the wall here, and you can see this missing graphic icon here at the top. I am sorry, I have text in the way. You can see here at the top of the player this purple icon, missing item. That is a placeholder graphic for the debuff of what Hellfire Orb is. So let's look now at the eagle shape. The Q spell is some sort of bluish teal shield that was casted on their teammate, and they were standing near their teammate, so they also got a shield. I don't know if they also just automatically shield themselves when they shield an ally, or if they just got it because they're standing near their ally. There's not enough context clues to figure this out. The W spell on their bar just looks like polymorph from earlier. When the player in the video transforms into an eagle, they still retain their shield, but also the HP increase was 15.01%. While they're in the eagle form, and this has to be the Avalonian form of the weapon, they cast the W spell, and it looks like they're able to cast this spell without any of those charges we talked about from earlier, which is interesting because if the werewolf can't lunge forward with any charges, why can the eagle still cast their spells? Odd. Now, I gotta say, this is a very big AoE circle. This is maybe twice as big as a longbow's E spell. It only seems to hit once, but it's hitting pretty hard. It hits this player for over 1,000 damage. And they're clearly in 8.4 armor. I don't know if the weapon's great as 8.4. The Q spell seems to be some sort of frontal beam attack, and you can see the range here. It's all like starting from kind of one of the lower ends of this circle here, the faction circle, all the way to the end of the circle. I don't know, that's kind of a weird way to measure it, but it seems to do an okay amount of damage. Now, another thing that I noticed too is that big explosion from the W spell left these jagged rocks on the ground. So I don't know if that trapped the enemies in the circle. That would be kind of cool. That would be kind of Zerg versus Zerg viable, which almost all Avalonian weapons in this game are designed for Zerg versus Zerg. So I am willing to bet that these jagged rocks are holding the players in, not letting them leave. Towards the end of the video, Robin Hincke, CEO, he's got his knuckles cracking, he's ready to bust some heads, and he says open world activities to introduce new equipment choices. So I want to talk about that now, because this was actually leaked to me. The source said he's an ex-employee of the company, that he didn't say if he quit or got fired, he wouldn't tell me. Also, he has no proof, so it could just be some wild internet troll feeding me complete bullcrap. But this has to do with the legendary weapons that are coming out, and this is what the leaker told me. He said that you're going to have to do certain quests. That's right, questing in Albion Online. Can you believe it? This is a game where you don't have any quests beyond the tutorial, essentially, in the very start of the game. But he said that the legendary weapons, the way it will work, is you will get a quest to, like, do an activity in the open world, which is, like, kill a bunch of mobs, or, capture outposts, or kill players, and so on and so forth. And once you've met the quest requirements for that item, it will then become legendary, and when it becomes legendary, it will have your character's name on it. So, let's say I have a quest to kill 10,000 enemies, and I have it on the Shadow Caller, I guess, so I go kill 10,000 enemies by spamming dungeons for a week, and then it'll be Swole Benji's Elder Shadowcaller. And the way that the legendary thing works is, depending on the quest that you do, it will alter the weapon in some way, as in maybe the E-spell will have a bigger radius, or maybe it'll have a big X instead of a circle. It's supposed to change your abilities to be slightly different and unique to what you want. So if you want a very specialized PvE farming build where you go into dungeons and kill things as fast as possible, which is what my channel's always been about, then I would want to make my items legendary that boost the spells that would benefit that. Whereas if you're a PKer, a ganker, or, whatever, you would want to pick the quests to make your weapons legendary that give you abilities to catch mounted targets, deal additional damage to real players, shred their armor, stuff like that. And the way legendaries work, from what I've been told by the leaker, is that there is a like, if you die in full loot PvP, that the legendary item will have a % chance to stay with you. So that means the enemy can't take it from you when you die. When you respawn back in town, you will have the legendary item still on you. And the other is that the ganker still does not get your legendary item if that fails. Instead, your legendary weapon with your name on it goes into the black market's loot pile, and so when someone opens a chest in the world, they can find your legendary item, and it will only be attainable from legendary chests, which, for those that run solo dungeons or group dungeons, is a 1 in 100 chance per chest spawn. So when I run solo dungeons, I can blow through maybe 20 to 30 to 40 chests per hour. So on average, it would take me 3 hours for a % chance to find a legendary from those chests. But let's just be real, the ZVZ players, the guild players, and the Avalonian dungeon road, etc. players, those guys clear way more legendary chests, so I doubt most people will never find a legendary in that method. Especially, like, who the hell is gonna bring a legendary to a ZVZ unless it's unless the legendary really buffs your weapon, like it changes Longbow's E instead of a small circle to like the entire screen. That would be way overpowered. That would make people quit the game if it was that strong. If I got a longbow that let me cast my E spell on my entire screen, I would just instantly wipe every faction fight forever. So I don't think they're going to get that strong. But essentially, those legendary weapons, if, like, say people like us, as solo players, we have like a quest, kill 10,000 mobs. Well, y'all can do that pretty easily, right? And so what you can do is you can forge these legendary weapons and then sell them on the market for a nice penny, so a nice price. it gives you an incentive to log in every day and grind the infinite grind that is Albion Online. But it also gives ego players, players that care too much about their character names or whatever, to craft legendary weapons, maybe a full set. I don't know if legendaries can be on armor pieces. I was told by the leaker, right now in development, it's only on weapons. So I don't know if that's the case. I mean, that's usually the case in folklore. Like, a lot of the game's lore, believe it or not, you could read this on the albiononline.com webpage, but the Albion Online's lore is based around King Arthur, Morgana, Guinevere, all that shit. And what is the legendary weapon of King Arthur? It's Excalibur. So there's not a legendary armor or anything. But with all that said, I'm Soul Benji. Thanks for watching. As always, be a bro and stay swole. If there's something in this preview that I missed, or, you know, I don't want to hear about the weird AI chatbot leaks or data mines, because none of that stuff is finalized or solid. I want to hear about this specific video. It's on the Albion Online, YouTube page. So you can go check it out or whatever. And if there's something that I missed, let me know in the comments, and I might just pin your comment so that everyone can learn from it. With that said, make sure you're subscribed, and on the right side of your screen, there's a video that you should watch. And if you don't click that video, then you're never, ever, ever getting a legendary item ever.